We were doing a huge aerial mapping project over Dallas. I called the client and I said, hey, we had a little incident, a bird hit the plane. So he didn't ask about the plane, he didn't ask about the pilot. Are you going to be flying tomorrow?
This week on the Matthew Byrd podcast,
the Senior Vice President at Sanborn, Brad Adams.
I'm a fairly adept public speaker, and so we are storytellers.
Yep.
We're painting pictures with data. Everybody is using laser scan. Everybody's using point cloud.
They start to believe it, they trust it, they want more of it.
The smartest guy I knew, he identified that the did a better job of processing LiDAR data.
And then you get to the pricing conversation and you're asking for the Ferrari, but you're like, we just want to spend the Toyota. Our community that we're building is the most important in the world.
We are hampered by how far we've come.
What this industry is doing is working in every area of the built world.
That's not the point. The point is to build.
Hey guys, before we listen to the full episode, we wanted to ask, if you're liking this content, would you please subscribe to the channel and like the video? It really helps me and our team grow this podcast and bring in more awesome guests to the channel. Thank you, and back to the episode. All right, welcome to another episode of the podcast. Excited to dig into the wonderful journey. Mr. Brad, thanks for joining.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So maybe to set the context, I'll dig back into your story, but first, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you work?
So I am currently the Senior Vice President of Transportation for Sanborn Geospatial. I am blending together the traditional Sanborn product offerings of aerial mapping and aerial LiDAR and large-scale offerings. We also offer content programs where we resell Vexcel and Google. And then 2 years ago, Sanborn purchased AppGeo, which was a large-scale GIS consulting firm based in Boston. And so what I'm doing is weaving those traditional business units together to provide a comprehensive offering throughout transportation.
Very cool.
So I'm dealing with multiple DOTs. We just signed Arkansas DOT to a big project in Louisiana. We're working in Texas and Arizona. We have a lot of opportunities, a lot of engagement, and we're really unique because not only do we have the GIS consulting and the mapping aspect, but we also have the content play. So
Sweet.
We can do content development, we can do specialized flight planning, we can do all of the publication and the interrogation of the data. So it's really a nice one-stop shop to that digital conduit that we're all talking about.
Very cool. Well, I think that gives some good context of where you're at and some of the tech that we'll probably talk about and maybe some future thoughts. But I always start the same way in that I love digging into a little bit of the personal journey of each guest. So I think it's fun to hear, how'd you even get where you are? So take us all the way back. I love hearing, what was your first job?
So I started out exactly the way every young man would love to start out. I was the head lifeguard at the public pool, sitting up on the stand, watching all the kids splashing around, having a great time. And I was about ready to go off to college. And I met a young lady. We actually ran into each other, literally ran into each other at Shepler's in Mesquite, Texas. And we fell in love immediately. And I was 18 and she was 16. We got married when I was 20 and she was 18. I moved from being, get this, I was a lifeguard at a public pool and went to work at a construction company. And I was doing heavy municipal construction.
Wow, there you go.
My very first task was they opened a 40-foot trailer door, completely full of junk, in August in Texas, and said, we need all of that cleaned out and sorted through. Well, number one, I didn't know what to sort because I didn't know what any of it was. And number two, by the time I got to the back end of the trailer, it was 125 degrees inside this trailer. But I survived the first day. One of my friends, one of our mutual friends, got me the position. And he said, I only ask one thing, that you make it 2 weeks. If you make it 2 weeks, then you can quit. But you've got to do it for 2 weeks.
There you go.
So I did it for 2 weeks. I got promoted to a foreman after 2 weeks, and I worked heavy construction all the way through college.
Very cool.
Which led for me to be a professional engineer. And so graduated college, went to work for TxDOT, and I was incredibly fortunate because I showed up at TxDOT the same time that the very first Intergraph IGRDS system showed up at TxDOT. So I got the opportunity to learn CAD from the very beginning.
Very cool.
And so that's how I started into this entire digital transformation of transportation, of engineering, of everything that goes along with it.
That's very cool. Yeah, that's I love hearing the stories and the people that were around and got to experience that first transformation of even the basics of CAD being implemented. Because I also, we talk a lot about what are the current technologies and what are the struggles of adoption, and it's like hearing some of the stories of the early days of a different technology and the transformation it took and the struggles it took. It's like you can use a lot of that historic information and experience to also predict some of how do you do it now and what do we expect for future, or how do we get through that transformation. So what was your first experience? I know you were also kind of early in some of the LiDAR technologies, and tell me some about your technology journey.
So I was, as I said, I was a practicing engineer, and I was so fortunate. I got to do some of the biggest projects in Dallas, and so I was designing the Interstate Highway 635. I did design on DFW Airport. I did design on the DART light rail system. And then I was doing design work on the superconducting super collider. And we had rows and rows and rows of microstation or of IGRDS stations with CAD stations, with inroads, and doing all of this design work in CAD. And in the afternoon of a spring day, Congress decided to cut funding on the superconducting super collider. So I walked into the office. I had 2 voicemails on my phone, one from my wife, one from somebody in Alabama. The first message, I decided I probably should call my wife back. I said, "Hi, honey, what's up?" She said, "Guess what?" And I said, "What?" She said, "I'm pregnant with our 3rd child." I said, "Hey, guess what?" She said, "What?" And I said, "I just got laid off." Because we didn't have work. We had 4,000 engineers got laid off on the exact same day.
Wow.
Second voicemail was from Steve Stanfield in Intergraph in Huntsville. He said, "You're going to come to work for us." And so I left being a consulting engineer, a design engineer, and I fell into Intergraph. And I mean literally fell into it. And so I got promoted into being the technical sales manager for the Western United States. And we sold inroads into Utah and into New Mexico and into Colorado. And we started to promote the digital design world, of which nobody thought that you could do digital design, right? It was, we're going to mark it up on a piece of paper. We're going to hand it to a drafter, and the drafter is going to put it all in. And that really changed. I pushed a lot of groups in, we can design in the computer. We can do this work. And we proved a lot of that at the Collider because we had no other choice. We were trying to design that project as quickly as we could so that Congress could not shut it down and take away the funding. We were unsuccessful, but we did promote that approach of designing inroads and designing with digital packages as opposed to doing pen and ink.
And then from there, you kind of watched it become the normal over time.
And then I spent 4 years implementing it inside of departments of transportation. And so we sold a huge implementation in Utah DOT, and we worked to make sure that everything was set up there. We wrote CAD. There were no CAD standards, right? There were no processes because nobody had ever done it before. So we invested millions of dollars in processes and standards and requirements and file naming and level naming and colors and schemes and all of that, because there was none of it at all. And so we did that in Oklahoma. We did it in Colorado. We did it in so many different places. And so I left Intergraph and started a firm with Doug Clark named Foundation Consulting Group. And all we did were CAD implementations, Maricopa County, a lot of different places. And then after 4 or 5 years, that started to the competition started to catch up with us.
Yep.
You know, and Intergraph and Bentley and others started to say, hey, there's money in this implementation stuff. And we were a really small firm. And so I got invited to become an owner at Bohan in Houston. And I started the Texas operations for Bohan in Houston. And it was the greatest opportunity in my career. I mean, a small, innovative firm with an approach that nothing is too big.
Yep.
And that's where we got into laser scanning because I showed up and Larry Houston had bought a laser scanner and he thought that it had a tremendous upside potential. And Dennis Sandine and Leighton Hobbs had done all this groundwork to figure out how to put the processes in place. They built this scan truck that had an articulated arm on it so that we could lift the scanner up and move it around. We had braces to hold the scan truck in place, and we had systems inside, and we had this cool color scheme, and we did all of these great things. And they had performed all of that foundational work for me.
Yeah.
But they couldn't find the applications in New Mexico to allow it to be revenue generating to the level necessary. And so we literally, in an owner's meeting, we were debating what we were going to continue to invest in. And COO said, well, we can't afford both. It's either Texas operations or it's laser scanning. And I told Howard, I said, no, I'll go find another job. Laser scanning is the way of the future. And he looked at me and said, well, if you believe it that much, take it to Texas and go make some money. And we started getting some small projects, and we made relationships with the TxDOT Dallas district. And then we got the Project Pegasus. And Project Pegasus was the downtown scanning of the highways in Dallas. And we scanned for 6 weeks. And at the end of that, we had a success metric that proved to everyone that laser scanning was here to stay.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what year, what time frame was that?
2002 to 2004.
Very cool. And that's pretty early. Like
pretty early. We had laser scanner number 24 or 26 in the world.
Yeah, that's crazy. You know, there's what impresses me or surprises me even, both of those, I guess, is that there are still people today that don't even know what it is. It is, you know, there are companies that have been at it for 20 years plus, and it's an everyday part of their work. And there are companies today that still don't even know what it is. If you mention the word laser scanning, they're like, what is that? Or how does that work? Or what's the benefit?
There are very intelligent people in my firm today as a leading geospatial firm that have never looked at a point cloud.
Yes. Yeah. What, you know, and even on that note, right? You guys have been at it for a long time. You're great at it. Yet you still have people who don't know about it, really don't touch it, don't see it. But I would say overall, the interest, the adoption, the market, all of that is growing.
100%.
What would be some of your thoughts as to, you know, what's holding back from everybody touching it, from the awareness growing even further, from it becoming a mandate?
Fear. They've heard challenges in the past.
Yep.
They hear the data is too big, it's too dense, it's too hard. Then we also have the other side, right? We have the professionals who don't really want to have everyone interrogate their data.
Yeah.
Because they want to keep it behind their wall, and they want to keep it for them so that they can serve up what they choose to serve up.
Yeah.
But I do believe that acceptance is continuing to accelerate at a tremendous rate, and we're seeing it now. We're answering a DOT proposal where one of the questions was, how much aerial mapping plus LiDAR do you anticipate? And I would say 4 or 5 years ago, that answer may have been 25%. That they would have 75% of theirs would have been traditionally aerial imagery only.
Yep.
And their response was they expect 80% of their flights to be imagery plus LiDAR into the future.
Yeah.
And that is one of those, when we talk about rising tide, the acceptance of aerial LiDAR, the acceptance of mobile LiDAR, the acceptance of static LiDAR that brings it all forward,
Yeah.
right? Because a point cloud is a point cloud is a point cloud. And if people understand that they're successful with an aerial point cloud, then they're going to be more accepting of a terrestrial static point cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that comes to mind for me I'd love to hit on too is you mentioning the different types of collection, the different types of data, that if a project is done properly, successfully, accurately, and that client or that project sees the success of using it, it is very positive for them. They start to believe it, they trust it, they want more of it, it grows the industry. But another challenging side of that the industry has seen is the growth of how many devices, the types of devices, the different accuracies of devices, and a lot of people jumping in and performing poor work and then creating a bad rep for the tech. We tried it in the past. It didn't work. It took too long. What's some of your thoughts around those challenges we see in, inaccuracies and wrong documents and, wrong devices being used?
The point of contention for me is the promising more than they need to in something that they can't provide anyway. And that is this thought that that I can secure a project from a client by promising him more than I can do for less amount of money than I know I can do it for. And we should never allow that to become the guiding rules in generating revenue in this profession. And unfortunately, engineers and surveyors have been doing that for their entire lives.
Yeah.
And it's not anything related to technology. There is a level of sales that people get desperate to find new projects.
Yep.
And they're willing to do more for less.
Yep.
And promise more than they're able to do. And nowhere is that more obvious than in laser scanning, in mobile mapping. I mean, the static scanning is one thing. The mobile mapping is even a level greater than that, because you do see the density and the completeness of all of this data. But you get into all of these similar problems. The number of times that we've had clients say, we need to have a 100 megapixel image every 20 feet. And then when we get ready to deliver, they want to know why it's 4 terabytes.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's what you asked for.
You told me what you wanted.
Yep.
And there's this level of misunderstanding. It's not that they don't understand. It's a misunderstanding that for every advantage, there's a detriment.
Yep.
For every positive, there comes consequences with that.
You can overspec.
You can overspec. And I've told one of our original clients at TxDOT, when we talked about scopes and specifications and what he expected, he's like, how long is a piece of string? Because everything can be accomplished. I've had a number of conversations with clients that they say, can you deliver 400s absolute accuracy on a mobile mapping project? Yes, I can.
If you want to pay for it,
Do you want? I can do almost anything you ask me to do if you're willing to pay me for what you're asking me to do.
Yeah.
And also realize that your project doesn't require that.
Yeah.
So you're paying for something that you're never going to leverage.
Yeah.
And even today, it's education.
Yeah.
Education and evangelism.
Yep.
Over and over and over again.
Yep. Yeah, it's like the more that becomes possible because of the technology, the more that people get sold in their mind that they want the absolute best. And you get that whole mix of what you just said, right? Where someone sees what's possible, they're like, we want that. And then you get to the pricing conversation, and now you're asking for the Ferrari, but you're like, yeah, well, we just want to spend the Toyota. Like,
yes.
You're like, well, why do you want the Ferrari?
Yes.
What do you actually need out of that? Is it, and then budget plays a huge factor. And then even just there's been so much misinformation, I feel like, and miseducation on what is possible for what effort, for what price, and what gear requires. And there is such complexity across the amount of technology that's out there that nobody has the right answer. It's like every individual company, every client, every industry is having to just continue to work through it all and fail forward. You know, and that's where I feel like there's a need for a wider spread industry, you know, conversation in whole of how do we actually start defining some of this in a way that is consistent, that people know what to ask for, so that, you know, we are guiding that decision. What accuracy do you really need for that project? Because the problem I see is that you get people going too high, and then they aren't happy that it took so long and cost so much. Then you get people that because of the budget, they go too low, and now it wasn't actually accurate enough. Now they're, you know, you got to find that middle spot, and it's hard to figure out exactly how to get there.
Incredibly difficult, and we will see application of the wrong sensor for the wrong opportunity, or we'll use asset level sensors for design components, and we've all been in meetings where the client says, "Oh, but can I get this?" And you say, "Well, no, because we didn't use the set of equipment that allowed us to do those types of things." And a lot of it is communication. Yeah. A lot of it is breaking down those barriers that we've had prior to this. A lot of it is, one of the things that I've been challenged with is breaking through my self-conceived notions of someone who has a valid opinion. Simply because they agree with it on one aspect doesn't mean that all of their opinions and all of their opposition to what I'm saying is not valid.
Yeah.
And being able to separate, especially into technology's evolution that we have today, it is very important to take each and every point and discuss that separate from all the other objections that someone may have.
Yeah.
As we know, when I was with Leica, so I was with Leica from 2013 until 2020, doing the mobile mapping, the Pegasus program, and pushing that forward. And we had tremendous hardware, and we had a tremendous solution in software, but the decision had been made that we were going to publish inside of Esri GIS, which immediately sent surveying community into an uproar, because GIS cannot be survey grade, and how are you going to publish into a GIS? And some of those feelings exist today.
Yeah.
Even though we know that GIS is being used in every moment of every person's day.
Yep.
I mean, I called the Uber to get over here, and it's using GIS to figure out where I am and where I'm going and all of those other aspects. And the evolution of the geospatial intelligence system is building a level of transition that we haven't seen since I was at TxDOT.
Yeah.
The ability to publish, to interrogate, to drive intelligence out of a huge data set is being offered to us today in a ability that we've never had before. The hardware, the software, the networking, the abilities to drop things into a lake, a data lake, and extract that is just incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your thoughts around innovation in whole?
It's imperative. It is imperative for people to try things that have never been tried before, and that's how we're sitting here today. I mean, the only reason that we were successful at BH is because we were willing to try and do whatever we could without fear of failure. Yeah. I mean, there were many days that we looked at each other and said, "Man, can we do this? And if we can, then how are we going to do it?" And I was the world's worst, and Jim and John and all of the guys that formed that tremendous team that we had, Dennis and Leighton, they'll tell you without fail. Brad was the guy who would sit across from a client and say, "Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, of course.
We can do all of this." And then I'd go look at Dennis and say, "Hey, Dennis, can we do this?"
Well, we got to figure out how to. I already said yes.
And Dennis Sandine is the smartest guy I knew. He could figure out how to put things together, and at one point he identified that the Apple Macs did a better job of processing LiDAR data. So we actually had We took Max on the road with us
Nice.
to process LiDAR data in the hotel rooms while we were doing projects.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fun balance, innovation and being at the leading edge of, being willing to be at the front end and try new things and willing to fail, but also a little bit of a challenge that you could also go too far that direction, right? Where people really do either overpromise something that's impossible, or they, I've seen this too in people early on that had a scanner, and just because they had a scanner, they'd get asked to do something that's really outside their lane that they didn't have enough even technical understanding to know certain limitations. And that's where that riskiness can come in of like, what happens if we do fail on it?
Right.
Does it impact us negatively enough or the client enough that it hurts the industry, hurts the tech? Or can we brainstorm through this enough that we're actually confident we can figure it out even though we've never done it?
Yes.
We there's a fine line there, I think, for companies and professionals to like, we need innovation. We need to push that boundary. But those that are willing to push really on that bleeding edge takes a little more making sure you have the right people and the team behind it that you can accomplish what you try to do.
Yes.
It's a fine line because it's hard. And when you try new things, you're gonna mess stuff up.
Yes.
To be honest, that's one of the things I loved about getting into scanning. I got into it about 2010. And for those next couple years, I didn't know very many people that were scanning when we got into it. So I didn't have a whole lot of people to reach out to and ask like how to do this or what types of projects to work on. Like we just started getting asked to do all these really unique things that we had never done before.
Right.
Can you scan a vehicle from a car accident? I think so. Let's try it.
Absolutely.
Let's show you what it looks like and see if it's useful to you. Can you scan an underground mine? I think so. Like we can try the best we can and see what the outcome is. And it's really fun to actually try to help somebody solve a problem that they have. And when you're at that leading edge, I always had that mindset of like, well, it's probably going to be better than what they do now.
100%.
Even if it's not perfect.
100%. And the key to all of that is communication and honesty.
Yep.
That there is no client in the world that is going to hold it against you if you walk in and say, we've had some challenges. We've got a plan in place to make sure that you get your product.
Yep.
But it's going to take us a minute.
Yeah.
And they're happy to do that.
Yep.
Except, we did have one client who we were doing a huge aerial mapping project over Dallas, and we had a buzzard hit the plane. And when we landed, I called the client and I said, hey, we had a little incident. A bird hit the plane. And his only question, he didn't ask about the plane. He didn't ask about the pilot. Are you going to be flying tomorrow? Yes, sir. We'll be flying tomorrow. That's all he wanted to know.
There you go. Yeah, communication and honesty and, that example of even during an effort, like, reaching out and talking through it. And I think for those, again, where we're talking about like trying something new, being on that bleeding edge, is also the honesty in the upfront conversations.
Yes.
Like if you have a new tech, you have a new process, and you're really honest with a client of, we have not done this. Here's why we think we can. Here's what we're going to try. Here's what we believe the outcome will be. Do you still want to do it?
Right. And also turning it to the other side of being very honest and saying, that's not going to work.
Yep.
This is something that is not appropriate for what you're trying to prove, because a lot of times they're probing to understand what the opportunities are for their organizations, and especially with who I deal with large transportation departments. They're bound by all these different influences and all these other challenges, and at the end of the day, their job is to make sure that they have pavement on the ground and that people are traveling safely.
Yep.
And everything else other than that is supplemental to their root cause.
Yeah.
And they're willing to go with you in a lot of different components, but you have to be honest with them. And that also, we had a leader at BH who always preached that we would lead from alongside.
Yeah.
And that is not just leading your team, but that's also leading your clients and leading your relationships, that you need to be next to them, and they need to know that you have as much invested in this as anyone else. And if you do that, and you are that invested, and you are that committed to not letting them fail, then most times everything works out very well.
Yep. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in the industry still today is the lack of education from the bottom and from the top, from the users. So if someone enters the industry right now, or one of those companies that doesn't yet use this, they don't use point clouds, they don't use scanners, but they've seen it, they've heard it, and now they want to get into it, there's not a great path for someone to understand all the different devices, narrow into which one is right for them, why they need a certain mobile option or a SLAM option or a terrestrial. There is not a lot of education around that. The best thing they can do is start researching, Googling. You'll find random blogs from random, vendors that of course pitch their product. Like, I don't see a lot of unbiased education around the tech.
Oh no.
And that makes it hard for those adopting. But then you have the opposite end of like what you just said. A lot of the users or the end owners of that data for projects, they're also not the technical experts.
That's correct.
And so you see companies that believe in it and they want to ask for it or require it in a project. They also don't even know how to ask for it or write it. So that takes me all the way back to, you talk about that earlier day of CAD. Building standards, building processes, building implementation plans, building, helping industries or clients have an understanding of those things and what to ask for and how to manage it. I don't see a lot of that yet in this industry when you talk about the technologies in whole, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big missing piece that needs to be worked on.
There is certainly that level of competition between the vendors.
Yeah.
And a certain level of competition to be able to meet specifications and then publish specifications that lead you to believe that their hardware and software is better than other components, which then leads to the conversation, well, if it can do this, then we should do this. And then there's no discussion about the error envelopes of each part of the contributing technology to get there, that every time you set a point, there's some error involved in setting that point. And then when you use that point to calibrate a point cloud, there's some level of error there. So no matter what you do, you're never going to be the specification of the hardware. But unfortunately, we have contract documentation individuals at DOTs that they only know to look at the spec and then put
that's
the
what
spec
we want.
in the
1 millimeter.
Request. Exactly. 1 mil. Well, and I've had, the fun part was when we started doing HD mapping and we started having conversations with vehicle manufacturers, because engineers, we talk in meters and feet and miles, and automotive manufacturers talk in microns and millimeters, and they're like, well, we need a 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter grid. And I literally had an automotive manufacturer ask me for a 5 millimeter by 5 millimeter grid of the interstate highway system from Chicago to New York.
Yeah.
And they had no reason to not understand that was completely impossible.
Yeah.
But that was the world that they lived in. And that's the beauty of where we are and you are today, is that we're not segmented into laser scanning is only for surveyors doing survey. It's only for architects doing building models. Everybody is using laser scanning. Everybody's using point clouds. And that segregation of the user base is not going to be there. Which means that you do need unbiased education. You do need areas of truth that you can go and look and understand and not get shouted down by asking what you thought was a good enough question, but it was in the wrong audience. And it is going to be interesting to see, because as we were talking yesterday, most of us sitting around that table yesterday, we're at the end. We don't have a lot of additional years to provide that understanding of what it used to be like, which I know there's so many of you guys who are so tired of hearing all of us old guys say the way it used to be, but there is that level of the bumps and the bruises and the scars and the bleeding and the effort. And in a lot of cases, we were able to achieve things simply because of the effort.
Yeah.
The under the truck at 2 a.m, jacking things up and making sure that it was stable so that we could get that last scan so that we could close it in. Or we did a project at Talladega Superspeedway, and we were given 4 days, and track access at Talladega is extremely expensive. And we planned for 6 weeks, and we thought we had everything in place. And so we went and scanned the first day, and everything went well. And that night they went and plugged in all of the batteries, and we had every excess battery we could find for those scanners at that time. And there was a power surge in the hotel.
Uh-oh.
And it blew the internal fuses out of 8 of the 9 batteries that we had.
Oh, no.
So now we had all of this work to finish with all of these scanners and 1 battery.
Wow. Uh-oh.
And so we had people driving to Atlanta. We had people driving to wherever we could get to.
Yeah.
And it was my fault, honestly, because the last meeting we had, we were sitting there and they were showing me all of the plans and everything they had. And I did say, well, the one thing we don't have to worry about is batteries, because we have plenty of batteries. And sure enough, that's what happened.
Yeah.
But we could have pulled up stakes, right? We could have called the track. We could have said, we're sorry. This is not going to happen. We don't have time.
Yep.
Rain's coming. All of our batteries are dead. There's nothing we could do. But no.
Yeah.
We mobilized. We drew up secondary plans. We had people that worked 24 straight hours.
Yep.
And they did a tremendous job.
Yep.
But it goes back to effort. Sometimes you just have to roll up your sleeves.
Yep.
And you have to put elbow grease on it.
Yep. I was just talking with someone else I was actually on someone else's podcast, and we were talking through, building a company or building a team, and this led to the conversation of resourcefulness, where it's like in that scenario, it's easy for a lot of people don't have that mindset of figure it out. We're going to do it anyways. Right. We're going to pull all things together. We're going to have the grit, the push. A lot of people when they face a challenge, they kind of see it as a wall, and just the mindset of being resourceful will lead you to grow in your career, grow in what you're capable of, grow your company. I say it as a leader of a business where I'm not the expert in everything. So why does everybody come to me for the questions? I'm like, right, I have all these different departments, but ultimately if they can't figure it out, they ask me, and I turn it around back to them, and I try to encourage and say, here's the thing, I'll always find the answer. Yes. I'll always give you an answer because I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to take accountability for it. And somebody has to take that step and say, I'm going to figure it out. And so you start teaching your team to do that too. 100%. In that scenario, it's like, if we want to be great, we have to be resourceful. We have to figure things out when we face something that we don't have the answer to. And I was talking with one of our other guests earlier saying, on that same conversation, because this is a popular one, is when someone brings you a problem, you turn that back around and say, from now on, if you bring me a problem, also bring me 2 or 3 solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. At least some options, at least some thoughts that you have.
Yep.
Right? And the other thing that is lost in a lot of this is that we allow pressure and we allow expectations to overwhelm us in situations where it's not necessary. Because at the end of the day, while what we do is important, it's not brain surgery.
Yeah.
Sun, if we don't get this scan finished tomorrow, I promise you the sun will come up tomorrow.
Yep.
And the opportunity to do the very best we can. And a lot of it has to do with your self-confidence.
Yeah.
You have to have confidence that you've got the ability to put together a series of events that's going to lead to a positive outcome.
Yep.
And a lot of that is making that first step.
Yeah. Yeah. What love all this. What would you say today is still some of the biggest challenges you see?
Integration. The ability to fuse data together, the ability to access multiple types of data, the ability to label that data with enough intelligence, with enough metadata that allows a uninformed user to drop into that and say, I can use this information for these aspects and this information for that aspect. And I liken it to when we look at our weather maps. In Dallas, we have multiple different aerial mapping coverage layers for counties. And when you're looking at your weather map, you can see that the 5-county area of Dallas-Fort Worth has much better granularity than the surrounding 11 counties. And inherently, that was flown at a 3-inch pixel resolution and everything else was at a 6-inch or a 1 foot. And inherently, for those of us who understand, what you can do with a 3-inch pixel resolution versus a 1 foot pixel resolution and how that is applied in your business. But if you take someone who's never encountered any of that, they're going to believe that the data that you have inside and the data you have outside are exactly the same.
Yeah.
And we see the same thing when we look at the bell curve of static scanning and mobile LiDAR and aerial LiDAR and aerial mapping and drone and all these other things. Inherently, we know the level of accuracy changes, the level of precision changes, the application changes, but those who are uneducated in that have no idea.
Yep.
And it's important for us to be able to label each one of those.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're going to expand this digital conduit through transportation specifically, is if you give maintenance the understanding of what this data can be used for without them having to go look somewhere else.
Yep.
That it immediately says, this is the quality of data. And I'm not as big on, I know there are a lot of people who are, we need to know what scanner type, we need to know a serial number, we need to know calibration reports, all of that. And I'm sure that's important. But that's not my vision.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about this is the accuracy, this is the precision.
Yep.
These are the bounds of the activities that you can use this data for.
Oh, yeah. That's huge.
And then let them move on from there.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I've never been the detail, the nuts and bolts guy. And I'm still not.
Sure.
I mean, you guys could throw around the names of sensors, and I'd say, yeah, that sounds great.
Cool.
That's not what I do.
Yep.
I know that I have to perform this type of project
Yeah.
for this type of client with these kinds of deliverables, and then that's allowing for success.
Yep.
But thankfully, there's always people on our team that know exactly all those details, so they run up behind me and try to keep me from looking stupid.
And all roles on the team are important.
100%.
But that is a huge challenge, and that is a big need, especially with clients that are growing the amount of data they use and the amount of projects they have captured, right? Right now, you've got facility owners and building owners that they might have a data set saved somewhere. You have no idea. What was it? What captured it? How accurate is the data? Did it have control? Can I use it only for visual? Can I use it for design? Is it fabrication level? No clue.
How did we extract the intelligence out of this? And is it an extraction of an extraction of an extraction? And we're about to have a comprehensive shift of the data, the spatial reference model across the world, and we're going to have new coordinate values, and we're going to have to start understanding how does that play in, and how are we going to bring in time into the equation, and how are we going to standardize everything. And I mean, just imagine when I started in this, everything was an assumed coordinate system. Every project we did was based on an assumed coordinate system, and it started at 100, 100. And now every single thing we do has to fit into the real world, and it also has to connect to every other real world component.
Yeah, that's
which is a huge undertaking.
That's why surveyors are still important.
That's why surveyors and mappers are
there's a lot of reasons, but that's one of them.
Absolutely.
Is, you might be able to scan the inside of a building with an assumed coordinate system, but when it starts growing, and I think this, to me, thinking future vision, this is where we start heading, right, is that people are starting to map everything.
Yes.
And it only makes sense that it actually is placed within where it actually exists in the world, because then what can you do if every building that's mapped is in the right spot, if every road that is mapped is in the right spot?
Yes.
It will lead to that future vision of an entire city has its accurate, true, current mapped data that they can use for safety, they can use for hazard, they can use for emergency response, that future vision. And that's why I believe that there's a lot of challenge to get there. But I truly think that this vision of long-term, what is digital twin, with real information, with sensors, with live data, I believe we will get there of every asset, all bridges, all roads, all airports, all hospitals, and we get to that future where there's so much that you can do with that information as you're expanding a city, as you're dealing with capacity, as you're dealing with safety. But it takes all of these issues we've talked about coming together and creating these processes, creating these standards, educating on how the ecosystem of technologies integrate. There's a lot of work to get there, but I think we're moving that direction.
And it all starts with the palette. And I like to paint pictures, and that the foundation, the palette of everything we're doing is accurate and comprehensive geospatial information, regardless of the source, that all fits together in an appropriate way to serve the needs of what's out there.
Yep.
And I also am a big proponent that there's a level of granularity that needs to be understood in all of this, that we get hung up with digital twin and we get hung up with all of these terms because it means something different to every person.
Yep.
And we did a project one time for the federal government that the spec, as written, said that we had to provide a 1-inch by 1-inch grid over 100% of the building inside and outside. Now, most people would take a logical approach to that, but the project manager that we had for that project was extremely literal. So we literally had to take laser scanners inside of closets and shut the door and scan a 4x4 closet and open it up and continue on, because the spec said. Now, logically, nobody needs a 1-inch by 1-inch of an inside of a closet.
Yeah.
But that's what is our fault.
Yeah.
We agreed to the spec as it was written, and that's what was expected.
Yeah.
But then that at that point, it started to damage the program as a whole, because of course, if I'm going to agree to that spec, then by God, you're going to pay me for that spec.
Yeah.
And if I've got to spend 20 minutes to get into that closet and scan that closet and then bring it back out, then I've got to get paid for that time for my crew.
Yep.
And before long, we were into the millions of dollars to scan buildings, and nobody's going to spend millions of dollars to scan buildings unless they know exactly what they're going to use it for.
Yep.
And that's one of the problems with granularity, right? Is it really important to know where every single electrical outlet in a room is to convey a true digital twin? My answer to that is probably not.
Mm-hmm.
But the next person you have in this seat will say, absolutely. If it doesn't have every electrical outlet, it is not a true digital twin, therefore it's useless to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where we, as a profession, at least have to be engaged in the conversation.
Yep.
To say, this is where we want it to be.
Yep.
This is where we want it to go to. We see it in transportation today, right? Model-based design, digital delivery. What does it mean? How are we going to do it? CAD to GIS integration.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Because it's a different definition. And when we can start to solve some of those things and make those questions answered appropriately across the board, and more importantly, to arrive on some answers that a majority of the profession can agree to, then we will start to see some progress. And in our world, it's likely going to be some of the big states and some of the people who have invested a lot that say, this is the way we're going to proceed.
Yep.
And then we'll see the surrounding states will start to proceed forward in that similar method, because it makes it easier to share consultants and share resources.
Yep. That's awesome. What do you think those that are, still middle of their career, if you were in their shoes, what would you be excited about for the next 20 years?
Oh, what the future holds from the celebration on the day that we have a full 24 hours that nobody dies on a public highway. The celebration, I mean, to be part of that solution to save a life, because as civil engineers, and I started as a civil engineer, I started as a design engineer, and our goal, our job is to protect the public, whether that's with the water system, whether it's with the transportation system, whether it's in a building. All of it is to protect human beings. And to think that people are still dying on highways, and the day that we can have a net zero success, and we figured out that it's because we had appropriate answers to questions that could not be answered before. And that was derived on geospatial data that was layered with intelligence and understanding, and then shared with the appropriate people. Because that's the other challenge that we have, is that in many, many cases, we have the answer to the question. We just don't have it to the right person who's asking the question.
Yeah.
And that the vision that we're promoting at Sanborn with the digital conduit, the vision that we're trying to produce, where you have access to all the data, and that data is all tied to a location that allows you to understand what it is and what it's responsible for.
Yep.
And then to be able to share that data with someone else who is assisting you in making that decision.
Yep.
And to reduce that lag of time between problem and solution. And if we can move it from weeks and months to days and hours, then all of a sudden we have time to think about and consider the harder problems and the bigger challenges and the other things that we're trying to do.
Wow. Yes.
That's
things.
If I was in the middle of my career, I would be striving to figure out, how do I fuse things together to create intelligence? And the thing I go back to, the right intelligence to the right person at the right time.
Yep.
And most of it's based in geospatial.
Yep. Yeah, a few things you said that I definitely agree with, and I see, and it's part of some of our mission. One is, I tell people our community that we're building is the most important in the world, because the people that are engaging at our events and coming to our, coming to learn, coming to share, they are the airports and the engineers and the industrial companies, the transportation. And as much as you said a minute ago, right, what we do isn't brain surgery. Correct, it's not. But at the same time, what this industry is doing is working in every area of the built world.
100%.
And the improvements that can be made in every area of the built world by innovators with technology can literally save lives, save money, improve what's possible. And so completely agree with you there. The other part that popped up is something. It was there.
Right there.
It was right there.
I saw it right. It was
oh,
it flickered.
Goodness. See, you had too many thoughts. I'm going in too many directions here. So that one will come back.
One thing that we used to do as we were training people in the implementation of CAD is, and it was complicated, right? It wasn't user friendly. It had a ribbon of 20 different commands that you could drop into, and we had the challenge between the developers and the implementers is the developers didn't care what the end product, what the consumer wanted to do. They only cared about what they could produce.
Yep.
And so you would have hundreds of functions that didn't have any value to this, but they're in the menu bar.
Yeah.
And they're in the pick down list. And so we always started our training classes by letting the students know, the professionals know, if it seems like it's harder than it should be, then it probably is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in today's world, we have exactly the same task. That if it seems like it's harder to have the data that you need, then it probably is. And there's probably data there, whether it's a content you can go and download from Google or Excel, or it's a custom collect, or it's something that was collected before and it's sitting on Joe's hard drive on his personal system that he hasn't shared with the group. There is an easier way to do it.
Yep.
And in many cases, it's simply taking the time to review the process, understand the challenges, and then to build a new path forward.
Yep. Yeah, and the challenge there is a lot of people don't take the time to slow down, to analyze current, and to research what's possible. And that's, I say like the slingshot method or whatever, right? You have to pull back in order to launch ahead.
100%.
You have to be willing as a company to say, hey, this is going to take a little time or investment, but ultimately, if we spend time on R&D, we spend time on innovation, we let somebody's role even be responsible for going to events, looking at technology, brainstorming how it could work, talking with other companies. That ultimately is what helps you make those steps. And so many companies get stuck into it's too much time, it's too much effort. It's like it's already working how it is, right? Keep it the old way.
Well, and I do feel in some cases we are hampered by how far we've come.
Yeah.
That it's good enough.
Yeah.
It's good enough to be able to do it this way. It's good enough to have multiple saved copies of different data sets because we know it's there. And, hard drive space is cheap, right? Well, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is to build a very robust system that allows us to do what we need to do without relying on the ways of the past.
Yep.
But embrace the changes of the future and embrace the opportunities to do things better.
Yeah. I still don't remember all my thoughts I had a minute ago, but one of them was you mentioned, right, that sometimes we already have the answers, we already have the right technology, we already have the right data, but it's not the right people don't know about it. That's one of our entire missions with our conferences, right? And sometimes people question the format that we use in our events, but we've designed it for a very specific reason. A lot of conferences, you go and they have all their breakout sessions, right? There's 100 different classes going on at the same time on different topics, different industries, and everybody chooses to go to the one presentation that applies exactly to what they do.
Or the one that they want to learn just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But we've completely changed our format where we don't do any breakout classes. We do one stage. And we also, at our main annual event, we diversify who speaks on that stage, what industry they're from. Because I believe that we make people sit and watch something they would have never chosen to go sit in a room and watch. But by doing so, that might just be the one presentation where the guy from architecture, here's the guy from transportation, whatever, right? The crossover of industries and experiences, because some industries are further ahead than others. Some are figuring out certain ways to use data. And so this crossover of industries, of different professionals, the gamers and the engineers and the public service professionals. When we cross those over, some people are like, there's not a lot of architecture content. I'm in architecture. I don't know that I should go. Our whole mission with it is like, but the purpose is that we're putting you in front of people who are all interested in the same overall theme of new technologies, digital transformation, innovation, and you might learn something that you didn't expect. That's 100%. One of our whole issues, because you say that, right? The data might exist, the technology might be there, but the wrong person is the one in control of it. So it's like, how can we help you meet the right people, or how can we introduce the right person to you that now solves those problems?
So do you put a signal jammer in the room so no one can look at their phones?
We should.
Because the biggest challenge that I see today, and when I make presentations, is you can see the minute that your content does not meet what those individuals are interested in seeing, because they immediately go to this.
Oh, yeah.
And and I've used some unique ways of getting people's attention, including slamming the lectern and and raising my voice, and because it's important to hear the full aspect of the story. Right? And it's a story. We are storytellers. And that's the beauty of what we do is we're painting pictures with data, and we're and I'm excited to see how you take your conferences in RCN as we expand out of terrestrial laser scanning, and we expand out of mobile mapping, and we expand to what all of the unique components of reality capture is, and what does that provide us, and as we do at Sanborn with all of the different technologies that we have that ability to walk through what is best for the situations, or how do we layer all of the solutions into the same deck, so that you can drill through it and get exactly what you need. And that's the exciting part of what. So we're not islands anymore. Right. And that was so much of the past 20 years has been that we have the island of the terrestrial, the static data here, and we have the strip of the mobile data there, and then we have the grid of the aerial data there, and then some poor soul has to try to interpret between, and we don't have to do that anymore, even though it feels that it's still that way in a lot of cases.
On your point of, trying to get people's attention or keep them, focused, honestly, that is a huge mission of ours. Is part of why we're building what we're building in our events and in the podcast and the media and the online content is we feel like that's been a struggle for a lot of people in our industry, right? You got a lot of surveyors, you got a lot of engineers who they're not the talkative type.
No.
Some of them are, they're behind the computer doing their thing. And my whole goal is like, how can we inspire them to get passionate about what they do, to be willing to maybe even go take a public speaking class,
100%.
right? Teach you some notes on like, when you come to our conference, here's some suggestions we have. Here's how we want you to try to engage. We bring interactive stuff, polls. We try to create really drawing videos that play before the session to get people hyped. It's our goal as a community, as this platform, as these events, is to honestly create the platform and create the tools to help the other professionals that are in the industry be the ones who get highlighted and help them, because the other goal, right, is also bringing even more global awareness to the whole industry.
Right.
Getting students and young people interested in this. What does not interest them is a boring guy in survey who's not willing to get up and talk about his passion, right? We have to change that if we want to make this an attractive industry.
We all have strengths and weaknesses. And I've admitted mine. I'm not the technical savant and being down in the nuts and bolts, but I'm a fairly adept public speaker, and I think that is because I only have one or two goals. Number one, be entertained. Right? I may not say a single thing that you have agreed with or that was relevant to you, but if I do it in an appropriate manner with good graphics and nice pacing and some adjustments in what's going on, you may enjoy what I had to say. And you'll retain that a lot more than if I'm droll and I'm compassionate and there's no enthusiasm. And I'm also only going to try to get across three ideas. Right? I'm not going to overwhelm you with all these things. At the end of the day, I want you to remember three things, and I know what those three things that I want you to remember are. And we're going to hit upon those multiple times throughout the discussion, and I want them to be engaged with me in doing that. And then there's others who are not good public speakers. And we need to understand that not everybody's a good public speaker. And these organizations that are trying to promote their advances in what they're doing, find the good public speaker or invest in the person you want to be that and make them a good public speaker. Because we're not doing anyone any favors by putting poor presenters on stage and having all of us, me included, looking at my phone and doing work and doing other things because I'm not engaged with that presentation.
Yep. Great points. Love those.
So when we go back to some other suggestions, make sure that you learn how to be a public speaker. Make sure that you learn how to be a communicator. Make sure that you learn how to be able to write and to express your ideas.
Yep.
And make sure that you do them in a professional manner to the right people over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Yep. Agree. And, I also, none of this, I would say, is in a way, too, of discouraging people to try speaking, right? Because the other thing is, anything that you aren't comfortable with or you haven't done yet, it's like you're not going to be good unless you start and you get the reps in a bit. Yeah.
Look, people listen to the way I talk and they immediately take 50 points off my IQ. It's okay. We'll get through it.
Couple questions. One, you've had a long career. You've worked with a lot of people. What are some leadership philosophies or principles or things, even as you were going through your journey, that people you looked up to or you enjoyed as leaders? What were some things they did or things they said that stuck with you in your journey?
They invested individually. They make everyone feel seen. They may not always agree, but they at least assess and make sure that they don't agree and make sure that they're giving the information and the input a valid appraisal of what is being said. They work as hard as everyone else. Their goal is to make everyone better than them. They never are singular in any aspect. And I've always tried to make sure that if I went away for a week or a month or forever, that it was okay, because there were enough people who understood the various components of what I was doing that they were going to be able to do it. And I always want to surround myself with smarter people than I am and allow them to do the jobs that they're good at. And I'll take care of the stuff that I'm good at, and then we will all be a team together. And, all the way back in high school, I played high school football like most people in Texas. And when you're an offensive lineman in Texas, you learn the theme of teamwork.
Oh, yeah.
Because nobody cares about what we did. Nobody cares about anything but the quarterback and the running backs. But it's all part of being a team.
Yep.
And I wasn't even all that good. I wasn't the starter, so I was a team. I made the team by simply being a hustler and working hard and supporting everybody else. And that has carried through. And teamwork is so important. And we lose a lot of teamwork, especially in today's world. I know that there's a lot of frustration from us old guys that we're losing those connections because nobody's in an office anymore.
Yep.
And there is a belief that we can get everything we need by being on Teams meetings and being able, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It is a dramatic improvement to be able to see someone's face while you're talking to them in a call that has been developed since COVID and all of the challenges that we have.
Yeah.
But it does not replace going to lunch with them or sitting at the restaurant last night and sharing stories that were completely out of the blue, or seeing their facial expressions, or seeing their body lean, or seeing the way they cross their arms and think, maybe they're not telling me what they really are thinking, or sharing that personal connection. And our years at Bohan in Houston, Barb Scalco and I worked together very, very intentional, because she and I were the opposite ends of the spectrum. Whereas I was the deal closer, I was the get to the facts, I just need to know what you need, how much you have to spend, how quickly do you need it, and I'll give you a plan. And we would walk into somebody's office that Barb had not seen in 5 years, and she would ask, "How's the kids? You got a grandkid now, right? Oh, what about the cats? How are the cats?" I didn't even know they were married.
Yeah.
And Barb knows But we would go in there as a team, and most clients are one of the two facets,
Yeah.
right? They either want the personal approach or they want the facts approach.
Yeah.
And Barb and I were exceptional at dealing with this because we covered both sides and we
Yeah.
covered it very well. And it took us about that long to figure out which side of the hat
Yeah.
this person was going to be wearing.
Yep.
And so the leaders that understand how to step out of the way, the leaders that understand that there are other people that are better at doing things than they are,
Yep.
and allow them to do the work that they need to do.
Yeah. That's a huge one.
It's huge.
Yeah. And I've, I haven't worked under a lot of people actually because I stepped out on my own pretty young. But I've seen in just the few companies I did work for a little bit of both of those angles where, someone, and honestly, it goes back to even the company I was at when I got into scanning, that instead of going, oh, you're the young guy, like we're going to go get the professional surveyor to, I was at a survey firm. Mm-hmm. I wasn't a surveyor. Mm-hmm. I was a young kid that was techie, that was learned quick. And the owner of that business pointed at me and said, why don't we make you the guy?
Right.
Empowering me, saying, you go figure it out.
Yes.
Go play with it.
Yes.
Go scan stuff around the city. Like, come back. Let's figure out how to. And so by empowering me, that completely changed my perspective at that point of, I wasn't just the guy who came in and did the CAD work. Like, I felt like a leader at that point.
Right.
Because I had this freedom, I had this flexibility, I was empowered to go make these decisions and try stuff. That completely changed my attitude, my work ethic, the hours I put in, the interest I had in it. And yet then there's the other side. There are a lot of companies that don't have that piece. And you look at what you can create in a culture by making those decisions. It's very, very powerful. At the end of the day, whether it's your team or the client you go sit down with, it's people.
It is people every day, and it's how you relate to people, and it's the honesty that you share with those people. And I had a very similar experience to yours. The first day at TxDOT, they just gotten the IGRDS system, and my manager literally looked at it and looked at me and looked at it and looked at me and said, "You learn that."
Yeah.
And there are people there for 5, 6, 7 years. There were people probably in the office that we were sharing that had aspects of bringing that technology in.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, he said that I was the one dedicated to learning how to use it. And from that point forward, I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I was in technology whether I wanted to be or not.
Yep. Yeah. That's awesome. Love those points. So I'd like to start wrapping up with the kind of the ending thoughts of, you've had a long career, and those would be some thoughts of leadership principles. We've talked a lot about the technologies. If you were to summarize some of your advice to some of the younger professionals stepping in to their journey, whether it be back to more principles, ways of working, what would you tell them? Some business, some life advice as they begin the journey forward.
There are thousands of individual tangents that you can take. And they're literally thousands. But you have to have your faith. You have to have your passion. You have to have a true assessment of your abilities. And then you've got to attack those diligently every single day. It is important to think about all of the different aspects of what it took to get here. And it's we hear it all the time. We're standing on the shoulders of those who came before us, and we all are. We all are on many different things. And individuals need to understand that none of this comes easy. None of this is given to anybody. It is something that you have to be passionate about, that you have to be honest about. And sometimes you just got to be lucky. And my testimony is, in many cases, when God told me to do something, I just said yes. And he said, go do that. I'd say, yes, sir. And he'd say, go do that. And I'd say, yes, sir. And that's that faith part, right? Is we've always told our children, you've got to trust your gut, that God has your best interest, and you've got to listen to what he's asking you to do, and he's asking you to be the best you can. And that's the one thing that I try to do even today. Yep. I try to be better today than I was yesterday, and I'm going to try to be better tomorrow than I was today.
Yep.
And that better has a huge envelope in it. It can be a better father. It can be a better husband. It can be a better leader. It can be a better employee. It can be a better friend. It can be a better advisor. It can be a better mentor. It could be a better discussion partner with you. I don't know what it's going to be.
Yep.
But by God, I'm going to give it the very best I can. I'm going to give the best effort I have. I'm going to do the best for everyone around me. And I'm going to see if I can advance the cause one step at a time.
Mic drop. That was great. I love all of those points, and that point of always trying to find a way to improve. We kind of build that into some of our culture here internally. We're like, look, a lot of people think certain aspects of what we do is already awesome, but in our mind, every single day we talk about the 1%.
Absolutely.
We're like, we don't say it in a bad way. It's not that what we did today was bad. You didn't film this bad. Your photos aren't bad. Your graphics aren't bad. Nothing is bad, but there's always improvements to make.
100%.
So you look at that 1% every day in some area, and over time, right, that leads to massive change.
Yes. You never stay the same.
Yep.
It is impossible to stay the same.
Yep.
You're either getting better or getting worse.
Yep. And the one other thought that goes along something you said as well is, trusting that there's always a plan, right? That God has something in your path.
Yep.
The one thing that I still encourage people with, even on that note, right, is it doesn't mean sit back and wait.
Absolutely not.
I truly also believe in you miss the shots you don't take, right? The quote from
100%.
Wayne Gretzky. It's like you have to try. You have to show up. You have to be there. You have to still put in the work, and just trust that that's all going to lead in the direction it's supposed to.
Yep. Absolutely. Every single day.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming in.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, it's been fun. I look forward to sharing it out, and I'm sure it won't be the last time that our friends here hear from you.
I hope not.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.